Welcome back to the Deep Dive, where we take the sources you send us and turn a stack of dense reading into crystal clear knowledge. Today, we are strapping in for some serious internal work. This isn't about dipping a toe into mindfulness. We're talking about an intense, structured, and frankly, a pretty rigorous spiritual training program. It's a 10-day path designed for accelerated progress toward liberation.
That's absolutely right. The listener has given us the complete blueprint for a deep immersion retreat format. Sometimes it's run for 10 days, sometimes even 30, and it's designed for a single purpose: achieving profound, lasting spiritual progress and doing it quickly. What's so fascinating about this particular structure is its impeccable lineage. It doesn't rely on modern fusion techniques or anything like that. It's rooted entirely in the core Sutta teachings, specifically the Majjhima Nikaya 6.
The Akaya Sutta, as per one's wish. Okay, let's unpack this. Our mission today is to trace this journey. We need to understand how this seemingly impossible 10-day window, with its strict discipline and schedule, how does it integrate a foundational demand for flawless ethical conduct, or Sīla, with progressive meditative training, from basic breath work all the way through to the deepest levels of concentration, Jhana, and then culminating in liberating insight, Vipassana.
And that MN6 Sutta is the governing document for the whole thing. It establishes the rule. Any desired outcome, whether you aspire to, say, gain worldly goods, achieve rebirth in a heavenly realm, or reach the ultimate goal of liberation, of arahantship, it's all achieved through one and only one consistent methodology.
One method for all goals.
One method.
Yeah.
It requires an unwavering, unified commitment to both ethical purity and intense mental development. The methodology is non-negotiable, regardless of what your ultimate aspiration is.
So this is kind of like the master key to success in any spiritual endeavor you choose. If the goal is a profound, high-level transformation, then the path has to be equally profound and high-level. This isn't about just hoping for wisdom. It's about systematically engineering the mind and the life that makes wisdom, inevitable.
Precisely. And that engineering process starts, and this is the key part, not with the breath or deep sitting, but with your ethical behavior. In this tradition, profound concentration is just. It's impossible if the ethical foundation is shaky.
This is where we immediately run into a divergence from a lot of modern approaches, isn't it? We often think of meditation as the primary tool, the main event, but here the sources are stressing that ethics, Sīla, is the absolute non-negotiable foundation. The depth of the dive is determined by the preparation of the vessel.
That's a perfect analogy. The sources make it crystal clear. The ground has to be purified before you attempt to plant the seeds of absorption. In fact, the time before you even arrive at the retreat is designated for introspection and for fixing any broken precepts you might have. You're not entering the retreat to start fixing your life. You're entering it to perfect your inner state using an already purified foundation.
Wow, that raises the standard significantly. It's not enough to be mostly good.
Mm-hmm.
So how is this ethical structure detailed for someone embarking on such an intense path? It sounds like it goes way beyond the standard 5 precepts.
It does. It absolutely does. The sources outline 4 specific requirements for Sīla that dramatically increase the resolution and commitment needed from the practitioner. They move from, simple adherence to a much more active mental cultivation.
Okay, let's explore those 4 escalating requirements. Where does it start?
First, and most fundamentally, you must dwell perfect in virtue, Sīla. This is that requirement for continuous, complete ethical commitment, Sīla Savasa Paraparakari. So whether you follow the 5, 8, or 10 precepts or the full monastic Patimokkha, the point is zero compromise. Any imperfection compromises the purity of the mind stream.
Zero compromise. That sets a very high bar. What's the second requirement, the one that starts integrating the physical environment?
The second is the practice of sense restraint, indriya samvara. This is where the physical discipline begins to actively support the mental discipline. And the retreat structure defines this restraint very practically by eating less, sleeping less, and talking less. You're systematically reducing the input of sensory information and your energy expenditure.
Eating less, sleeping less, talking less. So we're really talking about removing the clutter, right? The noise and the lethargy that sensory overload or physical indulgence creates.
Absolutely. Think of it as shutting down all non-essential apps on your mental operating system. If you talk, you engage social planning and mental narrative. If you eat heavily, your body diverts energy to digestion, creating dullness. If you sleep excessively, you lose practice time and you just reinforce torpor. So by practicing restraint, you're conserving, condensing, and focusing all your mental energy onto one single task, the meditative object.
And that level of conservation must feed directly into the third requirement. You mentioned it was maybe the most critical one for concentration.
Yes. The third requirement is developing high-definition morality by seeing fear in the slightest faults. The Pali is aṇumattesu, vajjesu, bhayadassāvino. This is the pivot point where ethics becomes a technical prerequisite for insight.
Fear in the slightest faults. That sounds like extreme vigilance. Why is such a magnified focus on even minor transgressions so necessary for meditation?
Because the entire goal of the advanced stages vipassana is to see reality with microscopic, high-definition precision. You want to see the arising and passing of subtle phenomena moment to moment. Now imagine trying to view the truth of existence on a screen that has, several dead pixels or smudges on it. Those slight faults, the tiny lies, the careless actions, the subtle resentments, they're like static or smudges on the glass of your mind.
They interfere with the image.
Exactly. If you tolerate even a speck of ethical dirt, that speck acts as a locus of distraction and latent agitation. And it prevents the mind from ever achieving the pristine stillness required for true insight. A mind that tolerates a small fault is, by definition, a mind with low resolution awareness. You have to match your morality to the resolution you're seeking in wisdom.
So the slightest crack in the foundation compromises the entire skyscraper of jhana. It's a purely technical necessity then, not just a moral obligation.
That's the most profound insight of this MN6 framework. And this high-resolution focus leads directly to the fourth requirement, cultivating moral shame. Kiri.
When we hear shame, we often associate with guilt or self-criticism. But how is hiri defined in this context?
It's very different. Hiri is defined as an innate internal shield. It's a sense of self-respect and conscientiousness that just recoils from doing anything unwholesome. It's not self-loathing at all. It's an active internal counteragent. Its function is to prevent those wrong intentions, those slight faults, from even appearing in the mind in the first place. It protects the purity of the mind proactively before an intention can even translate into speech or action.
So Sīla is far more than just rule following. It's an intensive, proactive engineering process designed to make the mind clean, disciplined, and highly sensitive to potential contamination. And that, in turn, makes it stable enough to hold deep concentration.
It's the necessary laboratory preparation.
Exactly.
You wouldn't attempt complex biochemistry in a dirty environment. The mind has to be equally sterile for the deep work ahead.
Okay, so once that pristine ethical state is established, the ground is clean, we can transition to the actual mental practice. The MN6 Sutta lays out a specific, unified set of 5 spiritual activities. The sources call this the universal formula, and they have to all be engaged simultaneously for spiritual success.
Yes, and this concept of unification is key. It's a dynamic system. If you neglect any one of these 5 gears, the whole engine just stalls.
Let's break down these 5 mandatory activities. The first one, I'm guessing, is the continuation of the foundation we just talked about.
Number 1. Perfect fulfiller of virtue, Sīla vivasa paripurukari. Again, the emphasis is on continuous commitment. You don't just achieve virtue and then move on. You have to maintain that ethical perfection as a baseline for the entire 10 days and beyond.
Right. Continuous ethical purity provides the stability. What about the immediate mental training, activity 2?
Number 2 is internal calming of the mind. Ajhata seto samatha manayuto. This is the unwavering commitment to tranquility, or Samatha. And the sources are surprisingly technical about how to achieve this. It's primarily achieved by an anapanasati mindfulness of breathing, but very specifically by watching the breath sensation only at a fixed point. The nostril area, under the nostril, or anywhere within the nostril itself.
Just focusing on that tiny area seems incredibly difficult, but also very deliberate.
Oh, it is deliberate, and for a technical reason. If the mind follows the movement of the breath throughout the body, the object of attention is constantly changing. And a constantly changing object prevents the kind of stillness required for deep absorption. This is why the instructions are so crucial. Care should be taken not to follow the breath wherever it goes.
So the point is to fix the mind on the sensation of contact, the feeling of the air, not the trajectory of the air itself. That would create an incredibly stable, almost single-point focus.
Exactly. That singular focus, when you sustain it over 12 hours a day, begins to generate this powerful internal calm. And as that calm deepens, the external sensations of the breath start to fade. And an internal sign of concentration, often called the nimitta, appears. This stable, brilliant internal sign then becomes the new focus, allowing the mind to move from basic tranquility to deep concentration.
And that high level of tranquility and stability is the necessary platform for the third activity. This is the heavy lifting of concentration itself.
Absolutely. Number 3, has not dismissed meditation, Jhana. This is the commitment to samadhi practice in true absorption, or jhana. The sources are unequivocal here. The goal is establishing all 4 jhanas during the retreat.
That is an extremely ambitious goal for a 10-day period. For listeners who might be unfamiliar, what exactly are the jhanas?
They are progressively deeper states of mental absorption, tranquility, and a very refined mental experience. They're not just relaxed or pleasant states. They represent peak states of concentration that have a very specific mental architecture.
Could you briefly outline that progression for us?
Certainly. In the first jhana, the mind enters absorption, but it still contains some initial, coarser cognitive factors, vitakka and vikara. So initial thought and sustained thought. The mind is newly anchored, and it's experiencing intense rapture, piti, and happiness, sukha.
So the first stage is powerful, but still involves some level of mental processing, some thinking.
Precisely. Then as the mind stabilizes in the second jhana, vitakka and vikara drop away completely. The need for steering the mind is gone. The rapture and happiness remain, but the focus is deeper, more sustained, and internal.
Removing those factors must feel like an immense jump in mental refinement.
It is a huge jump. Then the third jhana sees the intense rapture, the piti, fade away, leaving only this profound happiness, sukha, and clarity coupled with a developing equanimity. The mind becomes incredibly refined and steady.
And the culmination of all this?
The fourth jhana. This is where happiness, sukha, itself dissolves, and it's replaced entirely by pure, refined, non-reactive equanimity, upekkha, and a profound clarity of mind. The breath might even cease to be perceived entirely. By establishing, sustaining, and mastering all 4 of these states, the practitioner achieves samadhi, or right concentration. This is the perfect mental tool, and this level of power is considered mandatory.
That is a phenomenal acceleration pathway. To demand that ultimate tool be forged in just, 3 days of practice? And once the mind is forged into that perfect instrument, activity 4 begins.
Number 4, endowed with insight, vipassanaya samanagato. This is the moment where the profound stability of the jhanas is leveraged for liberating wisdom. You turn that high-powered, stable microscope onto reality itself.
What are we looking at under that microscope?
The primary focus is the dynamic process of suffering, which involves the 5 aggregates, the paññakkhanda. Our sense of self is constantly being constructed from them. Form, which is the body, feeling, perception, mental formations, and consciousness. You observe these 5 components arising, persisting, and dissolving, moment after moment.
And what does seeing that dynamic process reveal?
It leads, undeniably and experientially, to knowing the 3 characteristics of existence, tilakkhana, for oneself. The direct knowing that everything you see is anicca, impermanent, dukkha, unsatisfactory or suffering because of that impermanence, and anatta, non-self or coreless. This direct, undeniable realization breaks the delusion of permanence and personal essence. And that is what leads to liberation.
So purification, stability, extreme concentration, and then piercing insight. But all of this rigorous internal work is only possible if that 5th activity is maintained.
Precisely. Number 5, frequent occupant of solitary dwellings, bhayadassāvino, devotion to solitude.
Right. And again, we need to clarify what solitude means in this context. It's not just about the physical absence of people, is it?
It's so much deeper. The sources emphasize that while physical isolation is helpful, internal solitude is essential. It means stopping the mental chatter and emptying the mind by becoming an observer who is not reacting to feelings and perceptions. It means removing the mental clutter, the past planning, the future worrying, the judging by maintaining focus on the moment. You are cultivating internal emptiness, Sunyugarana. If you are physically alone but you're mentally engaging in a debate with someone from last week, you've completely dismissed the necessary solitude.
The 5 activities, therefore, create a perfectly closed loop. Pure conduct maintains concentration. Perfect concentration enables insight, and internal solitude protects the entire process from any contamination.
With that powerful theoretical structure of the 5 activities from MN6, we can now see how it's mapped onto the intensely practical 10-day timeline. This progression isn't accidental. It's a systematic, accelerated design.
And here's where it gets really interesting for me. This 10-day roadmap is a psychological masterclass in phasing the practice. It ensures no stage is skipped, and that the necessary prerequisites are always met before you move to the next level.
That systematic approach starts the moment the participant walks through the door.
Day 0, arrival and setting the stage.
This day is pure administrative and psychological containment. There are practical briefings on the do's and don'ts, how we use the facilities, when to eat, and so on. But the two most critical actions are, first, taking the formal precepts to really solidify that ethical foundation, and second, immediately starting noble silence. The internal environment is sealed shut before the formal practice day even begins. No time is wasted.
That immediate implementation of noble silence enforces the talking less requirement of sense restraint right away. It's all about minimizing energy leakage.
Exactly. Then you dive into the foundational concentration work, days 1 to 3, establishing foundational samatha.
Okay, what's the primary focus here, and how is the schedule set up to guarantee success?
The goal is deep, unwavering control over breath watching and anapanasati, and the sheer commitment forces this control. 12 hours of structured meditation per day, alternating between sitting, walking, and standing. The remaining 4 hours are strictly for functional needs: Q&A, eating, washing. That's it.
12 hours of pure focused attention for 3 days straight. That is grueling intensity. Is that necessary just to break the mind's habitual restlessness?
It is entirely necessary for accelerated progress. The technique uses the breath at the nostril area, that precise instruction from the suttas, to develop anchor stability. If the practitioner is using a methodology like, say, TMI, the mind illuminated, they're constantly monitoring the quality of their attention, identifying subtle dullness or gross distraction, and correcting it immediately. This intensity ensures the mind's natural habits of wandering are quickly overwhelmed, making it highly stable and responsive.
So by the end of day 3, the mind should be steady enough to have likely experienced those initial signs of concentration, the nimitta. And this is when the program pivots to the advanced stage.
Days 4 to 6. Mastery the jhanas. Advanced samatha. This is the moment of application. If the foundation of the previous 3 days was successful, the mind now possesses the continuous stability needed to transition from general tranquility to deep absorption.
Okay, I have to push back here a little, just based on what we know about meditation. You said the goal is establishing all 4 jhanas and knowing they are perfected in just 3 days. For many serious practitioners, achieving the first jhana can take months, sometimes years, of dedicated practice. How is this acceleration technically possible within this retreat structure?
That is the power of the unified MN6 path. The answer lies in the synergistic effect of the 5 unified activities. The initial purity of Sīla removes the latent agitation that blocks concentration. The strict indriya samvara, no dinner, no talking, ensures the mind is light and clear. Because the mind isn't spending energy wrestling with guilt or temptation or heavy digestion, 100% of its resources are dedicated to the meditative object. This level of purity dramatically shortens the preparatory stage, allowing the practitioner to move swiftly through the kana levels, refining the factors we discussed, dropping vitakka, then piti, and stabilizing in purupaka by the end of day 6. It requires perfect adherence, but the system is designed to compress this timeline.
So the intensity of the commitment is what purchases the accelerated timeline. That established supremely stable concentration then leads us to the ultimate purpose, days 7 to 9, insight practice, vipassana.
This is the final stage. The focus completely shifts from stabilizing the mind to analyzing reality. The mind, having achieved the 4th jhana, is now a high-power microscope stable, clear, and immensely focused. The practitioner must now use that clarity to analyze the flow of the 5 aggregates, the paññakkhanda.
What does that analysis actually look like, moment to moment?
Well, instead of focusing on the breath, the practitioner focuses on all sensory input form, feeling, perception, and so on, and observes its momentary birth and death. The mind sees the aggregates as inherently part of dependent origination, that feelings arise conditioned by contact, perceptions are fleeting, consciousness is momentary. And when the mind sees this entire structure arising and passing away without stability or any inherent essence, it leads directly to the undeniable realization of the 3 characteristics of existence: impermanence, suffering, and non-self.
The insight is purely experiential then. It's not just remembering a teaching. It is seeing the truth of it firsthand with a perfectly stable mind. So what wraps up the 10-day period?
Day 10. Conclusion and transition. The final morning is dedicated to Brahma Vihara meditation. These are the practices of boundless loving-kindness, compassion, appreciative joy, and equanimity.
Why shift to those benevolent practices after such an intense, analytical, and I imagine often emotionally taxing deconstruction of the self?
It's essential for integration and psychological rebalancing. Vipassana is sharp and analytical. It focuses on the suffering and emptiness of things. The Brahma Viharas reinstill these boundless, positive emotions and ethical grounding. It's the re-knitting of the mind back into the world, ensuring the insight is integrated with warmth and generosity and preventing the practitioner from falling into a kind of cold, intellectualized nihilism. This practice runs until lunch, followed by the breaking of noble silence, sharing experiences, discussion, and then departure the next day.
A complete system. It moves from purification to concentration to insight, and then finally to compassionate integration. Incredible.
The schedule is the infrastructure that makes this accelerated progress possible. It's designed to remove all unnecessary choices and variables that could dilute the concentration required for jhana entry.
Let's look at that daily commitment. This is the practical reality of maintaining that high-level focus for 10 days straight.
The schedule is militaristically precise. Morning wake-up is at 4:30 a.m. The day is structured in 2-hour blocks, alternating between sitting meditation and walking meditation. For instance, the first group session runs 5:00 a.m. to 7 a.m., often involving, say, 30 minutes of walking followed by 90 minutes of sitting. This pattern really dominates the day, 9:00 a.m. to 11:00 a.m., and the long afternoon session from 2 p.m. to 5 p.m.
Why the constant alternation between walking and sitting? Wouldn't just staying seated be better for deep concentration?
That's a great question. The alternation is a core component of the dynamic balance needed, which we'll touch on more in section 5. Sitting meditation builds samadhi, immersion, but if you do it for too long, it often leads to dullness or thinamita. Walking meditation is essential for generating energy or pagaha and preventing that torpor. It keeps the energy flowing and the mind alert. It ensures the concentration is sharp and active, not sluggish.
And the interaction with the teachers is built into this dense schedule as well.
The individual Q&A slots are positioned strategically. There's one right after lunch, 3 p.m. to 2 p.m., and the main session is in the early evening, 7 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. Plus, a general session sets the stage for the next day from 8:03 to 9:38. This ensures that any issues arising in the intense sittings, like feeling stuck in a jhana factor or battling specific distractions, can be immediately addressed and corrected by the teacher before the next long sitting block.
So the Q&A is really troubleshooting, not just casual conversation. Which brings us to the strict rules, the do's and don'ts that must be maintained to protect this environment.
The rules are essentially a barrier against the external world, and more importantly, against internal reactivity.
Let's start again with noble silence. How strict is the prohibition on communication?
Total. Noble silence has to be maintained at all times. The instruction specifically includes no talking, whispering, chatting, gestures, signs, or expressions, and absolutely no mobile phones or electronic gadgets.
No gestures or expressions. That seems extreme. If I need a tissue, I can't point.
That extreme level of specificity is crucial for stopping the social mind. The moment you engage in a gesture, a sign, or even an exchange of glances, the social machinery of the mind just activates. You start creating a narrative about the other person, judging their response, planning your next nonverbal move. And this pulls your attention away from the subtle meditative object and breaks that internal solitude, the suññagarana. The rule enforces such profound isolation that the mind is forced inward.
That makes the rule about practice integrity even more important. You have to follow the instructions you're given.
Absolutely. Practice integrity is non-negotiable. Practitioners have to follow the timetable strictly and not skip or delay sessions. And crucially, they must follow only the meditation instructions given, the breath at the nostril, and not mix any other techniques.
Why the strict prohibition on mixing techniques? If I feel my concentration is flagging, why can't I switch to, say, a visual kasicha practice or a mantra?
Because the 10-day path is a sequential, cumulative process based entirely on the MN6 requirements. The path from anapanasati to the 4 jhanas and then to vipassana is a specific Sīla-mandated sequence. Introducing, say, visualizing a flame in the middle of a jhana day introduces a variable that destabilizes the mind's current object of focus. It undoes the work you've achieved. The program is like a surgical procedure. You don't just swap out instruments in the middle of it. The goal is systematic progress, which requires methodological fidelity.
Let's turn to the food discipline. This connects directly back to that eating less requirement of sense restraint.
Yes. The rules here are designed specifically to support mental lightness. Meals must be eaten silently and mindfully. Only a light breakfast and the main meal, lunch, are provided, and the diet is simple vegetarian.
And the crucial rule, as we noted earlier, is the absence of dinner.
That's right. No dinner is provided unless there is a critical medical requirement. The rationale is clearly articulated in the sources. This restriction supports lightness and clarity. Only plain tea or an herbal drink is allowed during the 5:00 p.m. tea break.
How direct is that connection between physical fasting and mental lightness? Is that a known psychological effect, or is it purely a traditional teaching?
It's deeply understood in both traditional practice and modern psychophysiology. Heavy digestion requires a massive energy investment from the body. It leads to increased blood flow to the gut and a corresponding reduction in cerebral oxygenation. In simple terms, it makes you feel sleepy and dull. By removing the evening meal, the body remains in a metabolically lighter, clearer state throughout the intense evening, sitting from 6 to 7 p.m. and into the sleep cycle. This prevents the primary defilement of theta sloth and torpor from arising, ensuring the mind maintains the sharpness needed to enter deep absorption quickly the following morning. It is a calculated removal of a major source of mental fatigue.
So every single rule, from no gestures to no dinner, is not about arbitrary asceticism. It's about technical optimization for accelerated mental transformation.
The effectiveness of this 10-day structure relies on practitioners holding the correct conceptual map while they're undergoing the intense physical and mental training. And the sources provide a curated library of suttas to provide this necessary context.
Which emphasizes that the 10 days are not some isolated experimental method, but a high-intensity distillation of the Buddha's original teachings.
Exactly. When the practitioner begins the insight phase on days 7 to 9, they need that scriptural backing to understand what it is they're observing.
Okay, so let's start with the conceptual framework for understanding the nature of reality.
That is provided by suttas like SN 22.95, the Phechappama Sutta, the Foam Simile in MN 28, the Mahatthapetipadopama Sutta, the Great Elephant Footprints Simile. These texts guide the practitioner in understanding the ultimate emptiness and instability of the 5 aggregates.
Could you elaborate on the similes used in the Phechappama Sutta? They sound fascinating.
They're profoundly memorable. The Buddha compares the aggregate of form to a lump of foam momentary and easily dispersed. Feeling is compared to a water bubble transient and ready to burst. Perception is likened to a mirage illusory and deceptive. Mental formations are compared to a coreless plantain trunk, something that looks solid but just dissolves upon investigation. And consciousness is compared to a conjuring trick. It appears real, but it's an illusion created by conditions.
Wow. That provides the analytical overlay. The concentration allows them to see the arising and passing, and the sada context tells them, yes, this lack of stability is the true nature of what you're observing.
It connects the practice to the doctrine. And for establishing continuous mental presence, the foundation for that 12-hour commitment, key texts on mindfulness are essential. Texts like MN 119, the Kayagattasa Sutta, which focuses on mindfulness of the body, and MN 119, the Anapanasati Sutta, on mindfulness of breathing. These texts are the non-negotiable instruction manuals for the specific techniques used in days 1 to 3.
We noted earlier that the MN6 structure is for any spiritual aspiration, including directing a future rebirth. This brings in the context of action and consequence, or karma.
That's where MN 120, the Sakrupapada Sutta, provides crucial context on rebirth and karma. This sutta outlines the 5 qualities necessary for a person to successfully direct their rebirth toward a chosen realm. And this is essentially the blueprint for ongoing spiritual investment in life, even outside the 10-day container.
What are those 5 qualities that govern spiritual success across lifetimes?
They are, first, faith, specifically an assured confidence in the teachings and the law of karma. Second, virtuous conduct, sikala, the moral purity we already discussed. Third, learning the Dhamma, sutta, you have to understand the map. Fourth, generosity, kata, a mind that isn't bound by clinging or greed, but one that is generous. And fifth, wisdom panyaya, right view, regarding wholesome and unwholesome actions.
It's a holistic plan. You need ethical purity, intellectual understanding, generosity, and confidence, all alongside the meditation practice. The 10-day retreat is simply the highest intensity application of these 5 factors.
Exactly. And the most practical application of these sutta lessons for someone locked into a 12-hour practice schedule is managing the inevitable energy swings and avoiding burnout. This is detailed in AN 3.102, the Nimitta Sutta.
The need for dynamic balance. Why is this balancing act so critical during the intensive phase of the retreat?
Because the intensive environment exacerbates the pitfalls. The Nimitta Sutta teaches that if the practitioner focuses too much on samadhi alone on immersion, they inevitably slide into sleepiness, sloth, and dullness. If they focus too much on effort alone, on pushing the mind, they generate anxiety, agitation, and restlessness.
Yeah.
And if they rely purely on equanimity alone, they achieve a bland, non-liberating neutrality that simply ignores the truth rather than seeing it.
So the goal is neither pure rest nor pure striving, but an active equilibrium. How does the sutta describe this necessary balance?
The instruction is to maintain a constant dynamic balance between 3 specific factors: immersion, samadhi, plus energy, pagana, plus equanimity, upeka.
Can we use an analogy to make that relationship a bit more sticky?
Think of flying an airplane, or maybe even playing a finely tuned instrument. If you have too much power or energy without steering, which is equanimity, the plane pitches violently. That's agitation. If you have too much steering, equanimity without power, energy, the plane drifts and stalls. That's sleepiness. Immersion is the smooth flight path. When these three are harmonized, the mind becomes supremely flexible and capable. It's described as being like well-prepared gold. It becomes fit for any noble work, especially the concentration that destroys the defilements. Asavakaya samadhi.
The strictness of the discipline and the alternation of sitting and walking meditation are specifically designed to keep the practitioner constantly adjusting those internal controls. It forces them to find that precise internal equilibrium between focused energy and profound calm. It removes the option of just being passively neutral.
And that, ultimately, is the deep dive. A total commitment of body, speech, and mind to achieving a state of concentration and clarity that makes the ultimate truth of existence undeniable.
So, what is truly accomplished in these 10 intense days governed by the unified principles of MN6? We've seen the rigorous scope, cleansing any ethical flaws, establishing samadhi through the perfection of all four jhanas, and gaining direct experiential insight into the ultimate truth of existence, anicca, dukkha, anatta.
The profound takeaway is the realization that this path isn't just reserved for hermits in caves. It's systematic and replicable, provided the prerequisites, that total commitment to the 5 unified activities are met. The progressive structure ensures that every step, every minute detail, from maintaining silence to refusing dinner, serves the singular unified purpose of forging a mind capable of ultimate liberation. It is the architectural proof that supreme results require supreme, integrated commitment across all aspects of human experience.
This intense discipline, the total adherence, the absolute silence, the removal of heavy meals for lightness and clarity, all of it is designed to turn the mind into that well-prepared gold, ready for any noble work.
It forces a radical reevaluation of what is essential and what is mere clutter, demonstrating the profound energy that's conserved when distraction and indulgence are systematically removed.
Which leaves us with a final provocative thought for you to consider. This intense discipline is described as necessary to make the mind fit for any noble work. If that level of discipline offers accelerated mental clarity, what small, non-essential burden, a needless social commitment, a repetitive consumption habit, or a persistent source of external noise could you identify and drop from your daily life right now just to increase your own mental lightness and clarity, and thus make your mind more fit for your noble work?